we've talked about it before the game was even played. These rivalry games, sometimes you just throw, if not most times, you throw the records out of the window and you let them just play because it's just the records don't really matter when these rivalry teams get together. Kind of like Army Navy, it's not top tier ball all the time, but it's still a tough game to play. Auburn did it again, kept it close, blew the game, and they were at home. They had opportunities to extend it, but this Alabama team deserves the credit that it's gotten. They were able to hold it together and win the Iron Bowl the way they had won it. It doesn't move the needle, though, because Texas still has that win over them.
Right, and with Oregon ahead of them also, and the opportunity for them to beat Washington, they would be the one-loss team to get in my opinion.
Oh, yeah, and leave it to Alabama fans. They're going to tell you beating Georgia, if Alabama beats Georgia in the SEC championship game this Saturday, they should move into the playoffs. I don't see that huge jump coming from even beating the number 1 team or number 2 team, depending on what happens tomorrow when they do the voting. But
that's a good discussion, though, because then
it is. That's what I'm saying. Something has to be said. Do
you keep Georgia or do you insert Texas?
Oh, well, with Georgia, I think if they lose to Alabama, first of all, because of Alabama being ranked where they are, and Georgia, whether the 1 or 2, losing to a number 8 or even 17, depending on what's happening tomorrow with the vote, well, Georgia has to fall more. See, Michigan and Ohio State don't fall too far because they were already the 2 top teams, 2 and 3, 3 and 2. They just made the switch just before the game, and they played the game as tough as they could possibly play it. On the road, that's Ohio State. So I don't think, like a few years ago when Georgia didn't fall too far out when they lost to Alabama, this should be a lot of the same. Ohio State shouldn't fall too far down. They were number 2, put them at number 4. Straight up schedule, they lost at number 2. I mean, they lost
not come out yet?
No, it's coming out on Tuesday.
Oh, it comes out tomorrow.
Yeah,
okay.
they vote on it on Tuesday. So, but I'm thinking the best 4 teams right now, if you had to put a playoff together and try to be as fair as possible, you would still have either Michigan or Georgia at number 1, regardless, 1 and 2, and then you still have Ohio State at 4. I think Oregon now gets into that 3rd spot because I think not only are they a better team right now, in my opinion, than Washington. Yeah, they did lose, but we're gonna have this already decided.
Though. They have to beat Washington or they're done.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying, because we just have to wait till Saturday. I'm saying just based on tomorrow with Washington struggling like they did against Washington State. And
you can't jump them ahead just like you can't jump Alabama ahead of Texas.
I think you can jump Alabama ahead of Texas if they beat Georgia, because if Georgia's going to be number 1.
I'm just talking about this week, tomorrow.
Oh, this week, no. They stay behind Texas until they get the win. That's going to give them a reason to jump over Texas.
If they beat Georgia.
If they beat Georgia,
which right now, Oregon has their loss to Washington. There's no way you can justify them being ahead of Washington.
Oh, no. All of this is going to be taken care of on Saturday when everybody plays one another. I'm just believing very strongly that Oregon is going to beat Washington this time around. I mean, there's a lot of momentum. You mentioned in terms of this Heisman Trophy race with Jaden Daniels and Bo Nix, and I look back on their seasons. I look at the way they've gone about doing it. Jaden Daniels surprised the hell out of me. He's a legitimate quarterback. This guy is going to be a pretty damn NFL quarterback, in my opinion. He's just not a college guy looking good. And you look at the last 5 games, he has 18 touchdowns and 1 interception. Bro, that's highlight. But guess what? Bo Nix, 5 games, 18 touchdowns, 1 interception. Going into a Heisman race like this, you just don't know what you're going to get. I'm thinking if I had my pick, it would probably be Bo Nix. And I think they may give him that Lifetime Achievement Award. They've been talking about it all year, how he's played so long in college football. He had a chance to have more starts than anybody in history. And this is going to be it. Kind of like the Ron Dame Award from years ago, when Ron Dame had all those yards and he had a 2,000-yard season and they didn't give him a Heisman. But then he has a pretty mediocre season and they give him the Lifetime Achievement Award. Here's a Heisman.
It could be, but I think his hopes, it's going to depend on what happens Saturday. Another L to Washington. Even if he does throw 4 touchdowns and no picks, that L is going to weigh heavy. I think the whole nation watching.
It'll weigh heavy, and it'll be just their second loss to the same team, whereas Jaden Daniels lost 3 games. And the SEC, and this is a season where the SEC isn't as good, in my opinion, as they've been in previous years. I don't think it's just my opinion. Just look at the games. Oh my God! I mean, seriously.
I got you, but With a lot of eyes being on that game, people
Yeah,
are
I
going to
understand
expect
that. Yeah,
Bo Nix to perform at a high level. You want the Heisman? Go get it.
yeah,
He comes out with an L. Nah, let's go see what Jaden Daniels did. Oh, he threw for another 5 touchdowns. He gets my
yeah.
vote.
And it's like they've been matching one another. 4 touchdowns here, 5 touchdowns here, 6 touchdowns here. It's like every time you look around, they're doing practically the same thing. And now going and looking at the last 5 games for both guys, 18 touchdowns, 1 pick apiece. They have been doing a lot of the same thing, and they've been winning at the same time. But yeah, man, it's been a heck of a weekend for college football. And let's not forget the #1 team in the country, Georgia, playing Georgia Tech. They went to Atlanta and played them. It's typically it's one of those sneaky games. It can be a tough out for Georgia when they play Georgia Tech. It's always little brother, but on occasion, Georgia Tech makes things interesting. This is one of those times they kind of sort of made it interesting. But when you really look at what happened in that game and you see who wasn't playing, like Brock Bowers wasn't playing, Lat McConkey wasn't playing, you had freshmen at linebacker, they were holding these players out because, and Kirby Smart with his gamesmanship about why they aren't playing, he's holding people out for this Alabama game where he really needs these people.
If you're good enough to do it and you want to get healthy for the
big
time matchup, then do it. And if you can get away with it, by all means.
Well, you know what? I don't even believe it's something to get away with. Just go ahead and do it. They're going by his recruiting.
I mean, as far as getting away with the W.
Oh yeah, that was like an afterthought. And just and the way they've been playing Georgia, I mean, they've gotten better over time. And now Carson Beck is looking like a legitimate quarterback. He was able to guide this team. Let's not just piss all over Georgia Tech as if they're just an ACC team that isn't any good. They're better than the previous years this year, but in this rivalry, not as tough as a lot of the other rivalries that happened last weekend. But against Georgia, they've made some problems from Georgia in the past. This was kind of sort of not any different, but when you point out the players that Georgia sat down when it was an obvious attempt to get these guys some rest before the big game, and Brock Bowers still has that ankle injury, so when they say he has a sore ankle, I can believe it. But going against Alabama this weekend is going to prove everything. Obviously, going with the early game, I'm going to take Alabama to lose this game, not win, but they're still going to have an excellent season. And next year is going to be phenomenal because Jalen Monroe is going to be even better, which is I could have dreamed of him being this good to begin with. I mean, I've been saying it for two seasons.
You would think so, right? He's taking strides this year. Early season was struggling. And that throw he made to win the game, that was an absolute dime. He almost couldn't have thrown it anywhere else for it to be caught.
Yeah, exactly.
Right in the perfect spot.
Perfect spot. Receiver did what he's supposed to have done, and the defensive back didn't. And the game was over in Auburn. But that was a heck of a game to watch, man. I mean, it was excellent. A bunch of good games, and this is what you would expect at the end of the year. You look at all of these different games, and let's not forget Oregon playing Oregon State and smashing them. And that's complete, the opposite of what Washington did with Washington State. But Oregon State, I was expecting more of a fight in the Civil War, even though they're trying to change it. Get out of here. It's the Civil War. And they just destroyed them, absolutely just obliterated them. And that's why I think they kind of, in my opinion, should move up to that #4 spot, if not the #3 spot, because Ohio State, just being fair, should just drop a spot or two. From 2 to 4 is not unfair, I don't believe.
Right. So right now, what do you think the top 4 should be?
I think the top 4 should be, you can just pick between the two, but I'm going to have Michigan because I've had them all year long. Michigan, Georgia, now Oregon, and Ohio State.
But you can't have Oregon. They lost to Washington.
Man, well, if we're going to do it now.
I'm not projecting the future. I'm talking about.
No, exactly. So, you know what? Even without loss, because one loss teams, I mean, it doesn't sound right because Washington is still undefeated. But there's been weeks that have passed since that game, the same way we can say about Alabama has progressed and has gotten better over the year. And they've climbed the ladder since then. They've stayed behind Texas. But in terms of the top tier teams, Alabama's still a top tier team. They're just not in the top right now. But with those top tier teams, 2 Pac-10 teams are now in the top 5 or top 4. I think that still Oregon is the better team. And the unfortunate part about speaking about it today on Monday is that it will be proven on Saturday. And but we're speaking for Saturday now. Can't look into the future. They have the loss against them.
We can talk about Saturday on Thursday.
On Thursday, or talk about Saturday.
Today's Monday. We're talking about this past weekend.
I'm just going to, if it's going to be my list, I'll put Oregon there. People can complain about it. It doesn't make
sense. Boo! I'm a boo that
person is complaining.
I'm a boo that list. Boo!
Yeah, I can see how it sounds, but man, Oregon is that good, and if they lose on Saturday.
I don't think you can justify it. Them losing to Washington, who's undefeated, there's no way you can justify it.
Just the eyeball test. That's it. And I look at the way they did lose the game against Washington.
Okay, but I didn't say I didn't ask who are the 4 best teams based off the eyeball test. I asked who should be.
And you asked for my opinion. So